Welcome to the first ever episode of From the Gun podcast. My name is Zach Canaliche. Across the screen from me today is Noah Saw, and we are excited to get this kicked off, get this started. Noah, how are you on this fine morning?
I'm good. I'm excited. We haven't done something like this in a long time. I think it's going to be great. We're going to have a good time, and just looking forward to spewing all of our opinions into the void and hoping someone hears them.
Well, your opinion is going to be key here for the first topic. We'll dive right into it because it's about your pride, your love, your joy, Matt Stafford. He has been dealt to the Los Angeles Rams for 2 first-round picks, a third rounder this year, and the key in that one is Jared Goff is now a Detroit Lion. Noah, as a Lions fan, let's hear the overall view of this from the Lions standpoint.
Well, I mean, you look at this from the perspective of the Lions, and it was a trade that they had to make. Stafford isn't getting any younger. He's turning 33, I believe, on Super Bowl Sunday. He's been with us for 12 years. The organization's going through another rebuild after Matt Patricia and Bob Quinn just left an absolute dumpster fire in their wake. And I think that this is a win-win trade for both sides. We'll get into the Rams side a little bit later, but for the Lions to land 2 first-round picks in the next 2 drafts following this one, a third rounder this year, and a bridge quarterback in Jared Goff, who is still young enough that, hey, maybe he could prove us all wrong and turn it around and be a competent quarterback at the NFL level. I think that this is a big win for the Lions. This is how you kick off a rebuild. If you're going to give a coach and a GM 6-year contracts, you better prove that you're going to tear this thing down to the studs and start the rebuild the right way.
Yeah, I think they kicked it off right. I kind of like that there's no first rounder this year because it gives you more draft ammunition in the future to say, let's just say the Rams struggle. Let's say we've seen Stafford get injured. The Rams struggle and it becomes a top 10 pick. Maybe that's when you get your quarterback, and maybe you use this year to get a wide receiver like Jalen Waddle or Jamar Chase falls, and you set up those pieces around whoever that quarterback's going to be, and then eventually you can draft him. And it's not like, no offense, but you guys aren't going to be outside the top 10 next year in draft picks. I mean, it's a rebuild. So if you don't love any quarterbacks this year, it's so easy to go think, hey, next year we can get our guy. This year, let's build up a program and then install the guy once we're ready for him to succeed.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been seeing a lot of analysts who are already saying that those Rams picks are going to be late 20s, early 30s, basically locking them into an NFC Championship appearance. And while on paper that makes sense to me, they're going to be very good next year. They were only a quarterback away when you saw them play against the Packers in the playoffs this year. Nothing is set in stone in the NFL. Like you said, one injury to any key player, say Aaron Donald goes down, Jalen Ramsey goes down, doesn't even have to be Stafford. That team is automatically maybe a 500 team, maybe 7-9. And we're looking at a pick in the low teens to around the 10 to 12 range. And that, like you said, that just gives you more ammunition. They're in a great spot this year to just take the best player available at 7. Or if a quarterback is still on the board and they don't believe, they can still trade down because there's a lot of teams out there that still want a quarterback, like Indianapolis, San Francisco. Even Carolina could jump them and go from 8 to 7 and give them a little extra capital to move back. That's the point of a rebuild. You're just going for best players available.
Absolutely. And you know what? Talking about injuries playing into a potential, there is no team more that is banking on no injuries than the Los Angeles Rams. Because if Stafford, Donald, or Ramsey go down, as you said, it's over for them. You know, they are such a talented team, but they're also a really front-heavy team with superstar talent, but then not a lot after. They've drafted really well to make up for it, though. And we'll swing over to the Rams side of it now. You're acquiring Matt Stafford. No one knows him better than you, I feel like, you know, talking to you on a daily basis. He might be your Valentine this year. I don't know if your wife wins the job. Matt Stafford has really held your heart for a long time. Talk to me about what the Rams get in Matt Stafford.
Yeah, so like you said, you hit it on the head. Matthew Stafford's been my guy for 12 years. I remember when he first came into the league and he struggled with injuries his first couple years, and a lot of people were saying he was made of glass. He was a China doll, and I was ready to go to war for that man. When he had that game against the Browns where he threw the touchdown with the separated shoulder, I mean, we've all seen the highlights of that game. That's where I really fell in love with him. He's gritty. Still has an absolute cannon of an arm. He can push the ball downfield like no tomorrow. He thrives in play action, which is great for the Rams because Cam Akers really came on at the end of last season, and they could really have a great balanced 1-2 punch there. He's really great with receivers who like to chew up rack yards. You saw it with Golden Tate. He's got two of those guys in Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods. He's got solid tight ends in Tyler Higbee and Gerald Everett. I think he and Higbee are going to get along kind of how he and Hawkinson did these past couple years in Detroit. He's just very intelligent. He's able to push the ball downfield. And like we've all seen before, when the fourth quarter comes around, he's usually playing at his best. He's able to win a lot of games late down the stretch. Mostly that was because Detroit put him in bad positions to begin with. But when the game is on the line, there are a few quarterbacks I'd trust more than I would trust number 9.
Yeah, and you talk about the fourth quarter. I think this is where Ram fans have to be thrilled because you don't always go into that fourth quarter leading a game. If you look at the stats from last year through Pro Football Reference, Matt Stafford is number 8 in fourth quarter comebacks. Would you like to take a guess where Jared Goff ranks? Oh, and Stafford had 3 fourth quarter comebacks. Where do you think Jared Goff ranks in the conversation?
I'm going to put Jared Goff at a solid 23rd.
Well, if you add 10 to that number and put him at 33rd, you would be correct because he had 0 fourth quarter comebacks last season. We can even go to look at game-winning drives. Matt Stafford ranks number 5 in the league with 4. Would you like to take a guess again where Jared Goff ranks?
Well, based on the last one, I'm going to drop my guess. I'm going to go 29th.
You would be close, but it is 33rd again. He was tied for the worst with 1 game-winning drive. I think that is the biggest difference from Matt Stafford to him. Stafford, when the time gets tough, the tough get going, and Stafford is the tough, and Jared Goff is not the tough. So looking at the Lions a little bit more, because we know what the Rams have, I feel like, in this situation. It's clear. It's all in now. Matt Stafford's the guy. They chose him over a guy like Matt Ryan, or now we're even hearing Kirk Cousins is potentially available. They chose Stafford, 2 first-round picks. For the Lions, draft implication-wise, where do you see them today in February going at pick 7?
Yeah, so like I touched on earlier, it's definitely a best player available situation now. You've seen every recent mock draft, and I know you're going to see more where it's going to be, Justin Fields at 7, Trey Lance at 7, and I don't think that they have to go that route. I mean, a guy like Lance would probably make more sense than a guy like Fields just because of how raw he is. Goff's contract has an out after 2022, so he's got 2 seasons to prove it in Detroit. A guy like Lance, who is so raw, could take a year or 2 to develop behind Goff. And at 7, you really can't go wrong with any player. They could go with a guy like, if one of the top wide receivers slides, if Jamar Chase is there at 7 for some reason, if Jalen Waddle's there at 7, you could even go offensive tackle, even though it's not a huge need, and you could kick Tyrell Crosby, our right tackle, back into his natural position at guard, and you could grab a guy like Rashawn Slater, Penei Sewell, and just really establish that front line and give Jared Goff the best chance he can to succeed because, I mean, we know that this is a rebuild on paper and through every stretch of the imagination, but at the end of the day, these guys are professionals and they're not going to go out there and try to lose. You've got to put them in the best position to win because that's all they're going to ask for. So I'm excited by 7. I know last year when the Lions picked at 3, you basically could lock it in with Sharpie from January that it was going to be Jeff Okudah. You knew that that was going to be the pick. But this year, I feel like there's a lot of different ways that they could go with it. And that to me is exciting. They could trade back. They could take best available. They could really bring in someone flashy like a Jamar Chase, who we haven't seen in Detroit in terms of a first-round selection in a long time.
That's very true. It's been a long time since you've seen a talent like that. What, Calvin Johnson?
Definitely Calvin Johnson. I mean, Kenny Golladay, I love Kenny G, the KG Beast, but he is an elite contested catch wide receiver. He's not elite at creating for himself and making space. A guy like Chase can do everything. He's a perennial wide receiver prospect, and any team would be happy to have him.
Absolutely. Take a quick look at Bucky Brooks' 2021 first round mock draft. This was released just 3 days ago. He has the Lions at 7, taking Jalen Waddle, with your man Trey Lance going 8 to the Carolina Panthers. So that's going to be a fun offseason story to watch. Rebuilds to me are very entertaining. They're very fun. Maybe not as fun when I think about it as a Cowboy fan, but as an overall sports fan, I do love it. Talking about draft capital, Deshaun Watson now is the focal point of the offseason with Matt Stafford off the table. Noah, 2 first-round picks, a third-round pick, and a decently young quarterback for Matt Stafford. What is the price for Deshaun Watson after Stafford's trade?
I mean, probably your firstborn child, your soul. I mean, I'm serious though. If a guy like Matthew Stafford, who's had a history of injuries over the past couple of years now, and these aren't little minor injuries, these are concerning injuries, back, leg, arm, you name it, he's broken it or done something to it in some way. What the asking price has got to be 3 first-round picks and a young prospect. Like, I've heard that as of yesterday, the Raiders have decided to throw their name in the Deshaun Watson ring. And honestly, I have no idea how they would make that work. They have just average draft capital. They would have to find a way to move Derek Carr. And while the thought of Deshaun Watson in Las Vegas is super appealing, I think he would play super well with that team. I just don't see them having the available capital to make it happen. I think he would have to go somewhere like New York or Miami, where Miami can offer a guy like Tua, New York can offer Darnold, and they have a plethora of extra picks from their tanks to really make something happen.
Yeah, I think you're pretty dead on with that. It's a little weird because Deshaun Watson really runs to the table. Like, it's not like the Texans can just say, I don't know, let's just toss a name out there. Let's say New Orleans puts the best offer out. And for some reason, Deshaun doesn't want to play in New Orleans. Or if we think dysfunctional, let's say, you said it, the Lions have been dysfunctional for the last couple of years. What if they toss all those first-round picks in a package with Jared Goff and send it to Houston? The Texans could love the offer, but if Deshaun doesn't like the situation, Deshaun's not going to the situation. And that's what makes this situation so unique, because they might have to take a lesser package because Deshaun has to approve.
Yeah, I think just going through some recent news, Yahoo Sports reported yesterday that the beginning asking price for Deshaun Watson is 2 1s, 2 2s, and 2 young defensive starters at the least. We have to remember Deshaun Watson is only 25. He just signed a huge extension with Houston. So any team that gets him would get him for foreseeably the next, 4 years? You've got a guy who's just entering his prime in a position that's becoming more and more protected every day. You could get 10 plus years out of Deshaun Watson still if you make a trade for him. I feel like it looks like a lot on paper, but I feel like that's a reasonable asking price by the Texans. At the end of the day, Watson could decide not to show up to OTAs or practice or anything like that come this spring and fall, but you know how expensive that gets. And these guys, they want to take care of themselves financially. I could see a situation where Houston kind of strong arms him into showing up for camp in the fall, and who knows? I don't think this is being talked about enough. He could be under center for them again come this fall.
Do you expect him to be?
I mean, you saw all the recent press conferences from their GM, Nick Caserio, from their new head coach, Cooley, and it was all them saying Deshaun Watson is a Texan. I took this job because of Deshaun Watson. I expect him to be here come this fall. And you've got to wonder how much of that is coach speak and how much of that is them seriously drawing the line in the sand and saying, no, we're not budging. He's going to be a Texan because, I mean, as much as we say player empowerment is a thing, the power still rests in the front office. They decide where you go. They decide when you go. They could decide to hold on to him and basically force another team, like we said, like the Jets or the Dolphins or the 49ers, to really pay through the nose and just go all in on trading for a guy like Watson. I mean, you look at a team like San Francisco, if the asking price is 2 firsts, 2 seconds, and 2 young defensive starters, I mean, they've got pick 12 this year. If they traded for Deshaun Watson, there's no way they're drafting that high again next year, most likely, unless they have another year like they did this past season where every guy on the roster got hurt. But what young defensive players are you tossing in there? I mean, they're
Javon
not trading
Kinlaw.
away. Yeah, they're not trading away Nick Bosa. That would be
Mm-mm.
that would be stupid. They're not trading away Fred Warner. I feel like as much as people want to push him to a really good team, only the really bad teams have the capital to land him. Like the Jets, like even the Jaguars. The only good team I feel like that has a shot is Miami, and that's because they can offer Tua and they still have a ton of draft picks.
So I actually have a team that not many people have talked about that I hate saying it makes so much sense, but I've had this team's fan has been in my ear for about a week about it. He's one of my close buddies. All he talks about is this Deshaun Watson trade, and it makes sense. Play GM for a minute, Noah. If I offer you Deron Payne or Matthew Ioannidis, Cameron Curl or Landon Collins, 3 first-round picks and a second-round pick, do you trade Deshaun Watson to the Washington football team?
Yeah, and that's a team I'm glad you brought them up because they were super hot after Matthew Stafford. They were one of the top final three teams. They were close to getting a deal accepted. I believe it was them, Carolina, and obviously the Los Angeles Rams. The Washington football team, they're I mean, we've said this about a couple teams, but they're a quarterback away from being a really, really good team. You saw what they did to the Buccaneers this past year in the playoffs. That defensive front is absolutely lethal. They can get after any quarterback. They can get through any offensive line. And that's what happens when you put first round pick after first round pick after first round pick on your defensive line. I think it would make a ton of sense. Ron Rivera's really come in and helped change the culture. They have a new GM in Martin Mayhew, and he's aggressive. I can tell you from his time when he was working in Detroit that he's not afraid to go get a quarterback because he's the guy who brought in Stafford. I think Deshaun Watson would make a lot of sense. I know you as a Cowboys fan would absolutely hate seeing Deshaun Watson in your division, playing him twice a year. I don't think Washington's talked about enough. I think that they've got the capital and they definitely have the young defensive talent to go after a guy like Watson. That defensive line is absolutely loaded. We'll see. I mean, things have been kind of quiet the last couple of days when it comes to Watson. So maybe Stafford and Goff kind of reset the market and we're seeing where it's going to go from here. But Washington is not a team you can take off the table. Even Carolina. I mean, they spent their entire last year's draft class on defense. They've got the young capital. They could send over a bridge quarterback in Bridgewater to Houston. I think that that's another team you have to take seriously when it comes to these conversations, and neither of them get mentioned near enough. It's always Miami and New York.
So looking at Carolina for a hot second, you think of young players there. And right off the top of my head, I'm not looking depth chart. There's Derek Brown. Do you still call Shaq Thompson a young player? Probably not. Little bit older. Dante
Yeah.
Jackson outside and Jeremy Chin up top. Are you giving up two of those with the draft
I
capital?
I don't know. I mean, they've got Brian Burns too, and he's really come on
Mm,
strong on the edge. I just feel like they're a team that is super young. That defense is so young. Even their offense, I mean, the oldest player on their offense besides the offensive line is what? Christian McCaffrey, and he's in his mid 20s because DJ Moore is super young. Robbie Anderson's in his mid 20s. Like, that's an offense where you insert Deshaun Watson and DJ Moore, or Deshaun Watson and Robbie Anderson with Christian McCaffrey in the backfield. That's something that with the Saints in the middle of, we don't even know what they could look like next year, given how much of a salary cap just terrible place that they're in right now. The NFC South could be wide open. I mean, sure, the Buccaneers are probably going to be back next year, but who's the number two team? Atlanta was awful this year. The Saints are, and they could be in the middle of a massive rebuild. There's talks about them trading Marshawn Lattimore because they don't think they can pay him. Like, Carolina Carolina could be right there if they could make a move for Watson. And there is defensive talent on their side of the football that they could really put together a compelling offer.
Yeah, and the thing with New Orleans, on top of everything, they're like negative 70 to 90 million in the cap room. You kind of need to get that sorted out at some point.
Yeah.
It's going to be interesting. Watson we've never seen a quarterback like this at this point in his career available for trade. We'll end this topic February. It's February. If you had to say Deshaun Watson lands somewhere tomorrow, who's the team?
Oh, man. I feel like the media narrative is pushing Miami so hard. It's hard not to say them. But, I mean, you and I did talk, and I did call Cam Newton to the Patriots about 3 months before it actually happened. So I'm feeling pretty good about my quarterback calls lately. I really think that the Washington football team is quietly hot after Deshaun Watson. Like I said, they've got the draft capital, they've got the young defensive talent, and the rumors are coming out now. They were really hot after Matthew Stafford. So why would they not be really hot after a guy who is unquestionably better, younger, and just is going in healthier in Deshaun Watson?
Because I'm going to lose my mental sanity if he comes to Washington. I'm going to say the Jets for now. I think that number 2 pick's really attractive, and it gives you the choice of acquiring Sam Darnold and either A, using Sam as your future and using that number 2 pick to trade down and build up other things, or B, you can use the number 2 pick to go get Zach Wilson or Justin Fields. It really leaves you with a very open option of what you'd like to do at the quarterback position for the future. So February, I'll say the Jets for now. God, I hope not Washington. I really hope not. Swinging over to the biggest topic this week, Super Bowl. Kansas City Chiefs are technically the home team, but they're visiting the Bucs because it's in Tampa Bay, which is the first time this has ever happened. Of course, Tom Brady does that. No, this is being hyped up as one of the greatest Super Bowls potentially because we have never seen the conversation of 2 of the greatest players to ever play. And that's the conversation we put Mahomes in at this point. And the way I've heard this compared is you're seeing Michael Jordan versus LeBron James. Like there's no debate about what they would do if they played each other. You're seeing it happen. What is the key matchup for you coming into this Super Bowl for each team?
Well, I mean, the easy cop out is to say the GOAT versus the baby goat and just look at the quarterback position as the key matchup. But I don't know. I feel like Tampa Bay has really come on strong in their ground game lately, and that's going to be huge to keeping Patrick Mahomes off the field. We saw Leonard Fournette looked really good in the conference championship game against the Packers, and they have Ronald Jones as well. I mean, what's the one way to beat the Chiefs? You and I have talked about this many times. It's not let Patrick Mahomes on the field. If you can keep the ball away from him and kind of almost create a sense of every time that he touches the ball, it's like I have to score this time down the field because I don't know the next time I'm going to touch the ball because of how long the other team is just controlling it. This Chiefs defense is not the same one it was last year. They've regressed a little bit. And I feel like Tampa Bay's offensive line doesn't get talked about enough. They have some studs. Tristan Wirfs has come in right away and been an absolute monster. They've got guys like Ali Marpet. Like they're just going to run the football down your throat. They can do that. They're truly a multi-dimensional team. Brady has shown he can still push the ball downfield. He can still go deep. Just ask Kevin King. I think that the Buccaneers ground game is really going to be crucial against the Kansas City defensive line because, I mean, you can't win the game if Patrick Mahomes is not on the field.
Yeah, and I think every time we talk about how do you beat the Chiefs, I'm just going to say it over and over. You need to not let Patrick Mahomes touch the football. And for the Buccaneers, it'll be run game versus, Kansas City, which doesn't have a bad front in Nandi, in Chris Jones, and Frank Clark. They have a good front. But if you can control the run game and you run that clock down, that's what gets the Buccaneers the win. For the Chiefs, I think one of the most intriguing matchups is Travis Kelce against that linebacker core because Levante David and Devin White can fly around the field. And I would love to see, because the attention's on Tyreek Hill. He only put up 230 yards in the first quarter against you
Light
last
work.
time. Yeah, really easy. No hard work at all. So there's a big focus on him. I think could be Travis Kelce it comes down to against those linebackers, because if they start containing Travis, that might get Mahomes a little uncomfortable. He's never had really both of them locked down. And then I hate saying this name, but Akeem McCole Hardman, like, does McCole have to step up and be the deep threat if they're double or triple teaming Tyreek Hill in this situation?
I would say absolutely. McCole Hardman could definitely be an X factor. Like you mentioned, Devin White is a freak. And although man coverage might not be his specialty, if you just tell him to press Travis Kelce at the line of scrimmage and then run with him, I think he can do that well enough that Mahomes doesn't have his usual check down blanket. And although these Tampa Bay DBs aren't the quickest, they're long, they're physical. We saw Marquez Valdez-Scantling get behind them a couple times in the conference championship game. I think you're right. I think it's going to come down to speed. And if Tyreek's getting all the attention, I think it's going to have to be a big game for McCole Hardman in order for the Chiefs to get this dub.
Yeah, it's going to be insane. Also, look at the Buccaneers defensive line that is just, I feel like, blossomed overnight. I mean, I remember seeing JPP sign there a couple years ago, and you're like, seriously, JPP?
Mm-hmm.
Now he's a Pro Bowler. He's been incredible. They lead the league in getting to the quarterback in under 4 seconds, and Shaq Barrett leads the league in getting by his defender in 1.5 seconds, which is fast, especially when you're about to play this game with no starting tackles, as Eric Fisher went down with the torn ACL this past week. Let's just get into it. Who do you have winning this Super Bowl?
Oh, I mean, the current line has the Chiefs as 3-point favorites, and I still think I'm going to go with the Chiefs. I think you saw what Mahomes did last year against the 49ers. That was another elite defense, and yeah, they kept him penned in for the first half, but you can only hold down a guy like Patrick Mahomes for so long. At the end of his career, permitting health and all things otherwise, I think we're really going to say that he was one of the greatest, if not the greatest of all time. He makes plays no other quarterback has ever made before in their career. And when the going gets tough, he can make things happen with his legs. I mean, we saw what he did last year against Tennessee in the playoffs. That touchdown run was absolutely crazy. And like you said, the Kansas City O-line has to come up big because it kind of is a ragtag, patch together work right now on the O-line against a terrifying D-line that just got Vita Vea back. So, like you said, they've got to rely on that speed. McCole Hardman has got to get open quickly. Tyreek Hill's got to get open quickly. The Lizard King, Sammy Watkins, he's got to come back and he's got to have an impact. And honestly, Clyde Edwards-Helaire's got to show me something because he has not been what everyone thought he would be. And yeah, there's been health concerns and this and that, but when you're getting outsnapped by Darrell Williams, that's concerning. I think that Clyde Edwards-Helaire has to have a big game. He's probably going to get quite a few checkdowns from Mahomes when the Buccaneers pass rush does get home because it's going to get home. And he's got to make things happen.
Yeah, I agree with that. And, it's weird saying it's Le'Veon Bell's backfield right now. Somehow that has happened. When we started the season with him as a Jet barely playing and Frank Gore getting more snaps. But I agree with you. Without Mitchell Schwartz and without Eric Fisher, I still take the Chiefs because Patrick Mahomes, he is incredible. If you look at his pace of his career so far, with the second Super Bowl, beats Tom Brady in every category at that same stage of his career. It is incredible what we're witnessing with Patrick Mahomes, and how I view it is it's our generation's Jordan. We're going to witness in his entire career. We saw him get drafted. We're going to see everything play out, and I'm voting for him 100% of the way. I want to see him get another ring here. I think Bieniemy and Reed are too smart. I think Bowles is a really good defensive coordinator, and he's proved it so much this year. He has been an incredible DC. But Bieniemy and Reed are smart. They're going to play the short game. We're going to see a lot of slants, a lot of drags, a lot of ins, quick, easy passes, so Mahomes can get it off before someone gets to him. And I take the Chiefs. I think it would be a pretty high-scoring game. I'll say 35-31 Chiefs.
Yeah, looking at the over, I believe it's currently at 56.5. And I would definitely say that I would take the over. Even though we did stress the ground game, both of these offenses are elite. Yeah, I'm going to go Kansas City 32. Wait, that wouldn't work with my over. I need to change my bet. Kansas City 37, Tampa Bay 35. I feel like this is going to be a really good game. I hope we get blessed with one of the games for the ages. Kind of like people have talked about, the Super Bowl where Eli Manning took down the undefeated Patriots and you're just on your seat until the edge of the game. That's what I want this year. As a neutral fan who just really wants to see a great game and is slightly leaning the Chiefs' direction, I want a Chiefs win, but I want it to be close and I want to be engaged and entertained for the entire game.
Absolutely. So that is our portion of what's happening in the NFL today. We will always hit that on this podcast, but now we shift over to somehow the draft is relevant because we have one event this offseason, no combine. There's just going to be pro days, which is weird enough in its own sense because somehow we have to get NFL officials to every pro day to officially run the 40s and all that because, pro days sometimes tack on or take off an extra second or two for their guys. Senior Bowl happened. Senior Bowl was great. It's fun to watch, fun to see tapes, ton of stuff on Twitter. Let's hear a winner and a loser from the Senior Bowl for you, Noah.
I mean, when you come into the Senior Bowl as an injury replacement, no one's ever heard your name. You've gone to maybe one of the smallest schools in the country, Division III, and you come in and absolutely dominate every defensive lineman that tries to look your way. My winner has to be Quinn Meinerz. He comes in, he crop tops himself every day. He's got this glorious gut hanging out, and he is just beating the crap out of grown men. As a Division III prospect, I feel like that has to be the biggest winner because he came in as an absolute no-name, and he might have walked himself into a late day 2 selection. Quinn Meinerz, congratulations, my man. That you looked great out there.
It was pretty great. The crop top's pretty awesome. My winner is actually also going to be a tackle. I go with Dylan Radins, the North Dakota State left tackle. Another not technically Division I, but not a part of the college football system. He had a great weekend and he did really well against some really good tackle or some really good edges. I really liked his tape, and I think you were kind of looking at him as a lock for day 3. I'm not shocked if we hear him day 2. I think he's going to be a day 2 pick, and you could see him maybe catapult a guy like Alex Leatherwood, who was a top 10 prospect at the beginning of the year and now is being talked about as a day 2 pick. I really liked his week. I think he had a great week, played really good against a lot of good competition. So hats off. The tackles, I guess, got the win this week. We sadly have to look at losers, though. Who is your loser?
Oh, man. I feel like there was a lot of offensive linemen and a couple edge rushers who really just didn't show up. But my biggest loser is going to be Florida State defensive tackle Marvin Wilson. A lot of people, McShay and Kuiper included, have both still have him mocked in the first round of their drafts. And after what he did at the Senior Bowl, I just don't see it. He is far too inconsistent. There are flashes, don't get me wrong, but he didn't show up. He didn't make waves in practice. Like, I don't know. I just don't think that he showed out in a way that everyone was expecting him to. The potential is there, but he just looked slow. He looked rusty. He didn't look ready to be there. I would be surprised if he was a day 2 selection anymore. I think that he's a guy you look at and you say, I'm going to let someone else take him. And if he turns out, great. But I don't think that he's someone I would want on my team after the effort that he displayed at the Senior Bowl this past week.
Yeah, not a great week for him. My loser goes to Tough Borland, the Ohio State linebacker. There are actually 3 Ohio State linebackers in this draft, which is actually insane. Browning had a good week. Hillard had a really good week because he showed he could play some coverage, and that is what linebackers have to do nowadays. But Tough Borland, whew, abused by running backs would be an understatement at the Senior Bowl. They were running rampant on him. I mean, if you wanted to have a catch, just find Tough Borland. He's a good tackler, like really good tackler, and he can make some plays, but he's not the linebacker you need anymore in the NFL. You know, it used to be get the tackle, play big, big hits, cool. That's Tough Borland. If I heard Marcus Mosher of Locked On Cowboys say, if he was in the draft 20 years ago, he is an all-pro first-round pick. But that's not the NFL anymore. And coverage, especially on running backs, he was abused on them. I mean, just picked apart wheel routes, angle routes, just run out right and get open. Tough Borland couldn't cover. And I hate to say it, but Tough Borland was a major loser. I don't want to say he goes undrafted because I feel like some team will give him a shot, but I think you lock him in for day 3, bare minimum 6th round.
Yeah,
bare minimum.
Like you said, he is a player from a past era. If he was in the draft in the 80s, in the 90s, we're talking first day prospect, getting all the love because he can lay the wood. The dude can rap and tackle like there are like few other, but when you're looking like Chaz Surratt out there in coverage, it's game over for you. I had to sneak him in there. Honorable mention loser. Our guy Chaz Surratt, who we were both so high on, went to the Senior Bowl and absolutely bombed with his T-Rex arms. Absolutely bombed.
That one hurts because before the Senior Bowl, I remember we both were making mock drafts and we both took him round 3 and we were like, no, I get Chaz Surratt. You don't get him. You can take Boring. You could take Fields from West Virginia. And now both of us are like, yeah, you can have him. It's all good. You can have him. I don't want him.
Speaking of players who we don't want to share, I think it's time to roll into the hype train.
All aboard! Better make a decision if you're on or off this train, because once this train starts, nothing can stop it. Get ready, get set, get hyped, because this is Hype Train. Yes, this is the first Hype Train. I am so excited for this segment, and let's see who's riding that hype train today. It is our good friend, wide receiver, Dwayne Eskridge, who was a stud at the Senior Bowl. He lit it up. Nobody could guard him. Him and Shi Smith were incredible at the Senior Bowl, big winners as well. But Dwayne Eskridge has cemented his name into the 2nd round, and the hype is real on him. Noah, are you jumping on the hype train or are you leaving it?
Oh, I am the conductor of the hype train, my friend, for Dwayne Eskridge. When your player coming out of college is Tyreek Hill light, you're running a 4.3 40, and people talk about you as a freak in the weight room, not to mention that he can jump. Give me all the Dwayne Eskridge. I don't care that he's 5'9". The Lions, Danny Amendola's gone. We're placing him right into the slot. He might even make Jared Goff look good. Dwayne Eskridge, I am all aboard that hype train.
Oh, I'm all aboard it too. I don't know who can't be aboard it right now. Like, this was an easy hype train name. It was so easy to jump on this train. I love this guy. I'm a Dallas Cowboy fan. I don't need a wide receiver, but if Dallas took him round 2, I'd have no complaints. I don't care about the defense at that point. Forget the defense. Dwayne Eskridge is the move. He has so much hype. Do you think he could enter the back end of the 1st round?
I feel like in order for that to happen, he would just have to absolutely blow the doors off at his workouts because, well, he played at a smaller school. MAC football is not elite. I mean, in 6 games this year, Eskridge put up 786 yards and 8 touchdowns in 6 games. Yes, he is super duper good. He is electric with the ball in his hands. MAC football is also a joke as someone who lives in the state where Western, Central, and Eastern play. You look at guys, who is that running back from Buffalo who scored like 8 touchdowns in 1 game this past year?
Jared Peterson.
Yeah, that's MAC football in a nutshell right there. If you have a semi-competent offense, it's night-night for everyone else. So while I think Dwayne Eskridge is great, I think he's going to be a guaranteed second-round selection. Unless he absolutely destroys his workouts, I don't see him creeping into the back of the first round, which is great because then the Lions can take him at 39 and I can be happy and it'll be perfect.
We can all dream, but you look at a guy like, Tyreek Hill, West Alabama Tigers, and yes, he was impressive, but he did not sniff the first round. It's going to be interesting where he goes. Wide receivers can be very weird. There's a wide receiver who I like named Tutu Atwell from Louisville, and he was a 5th-round pick, and then all of a sudden last week he started showing up in the late first round because he's fast. So wide receivers are a weird draft thing. All I know is you can be the conductor, but I'm in control of the train. I am all in on Eskridge. You know what? Bare minimum, I hope he ends up on one of our teams so we can root for him together because I will root him on. Now, unless he becomes an Eagle, Giant, or Washington football team player, then I cannot root. But he's awesome. He is incredible. The hype train is so far out on him. We've left the station. We're on it permanently.
Yep. And this is why the Senior Bowl is so great, because if this hadn't happened, Eskridge, I mean, he wouldn't be a different player if the Senior Bowl hadn't happened, but it got him on the radar. It got other teams talking. He really solidified himself, and man, I just love the Senior Bowl so much because you get to see all these guys. We got no idea who they are, what helmet that is. Like my winner, Quinn Meinertz. Nobody on the planet knew who he was. He rolls into Senior Bowl, starts pancaking some dudes, and that's the beauty of it. Like, you can put yourself on the radar. I love it. I'm all in.
Well, that is it for From the Gun podcast. Thank you for listening to the episode. We are excited to do this. It's going to be a lot of fun, Noah.
Yes, it is, sir. Yes, it is. It's good to be back on the microphone. I look forward to our next episode.
It'll be after the Super Bowl. Good luck to both teams at the Super Bowl. And everyone, thanks for listening. Have a good night.